This week, while I knew I'd be making a video on Norman Rockwell, I stumbled upon this comment on a modern art Facebook page. It was found under an image of François Rupert Carabin, which got critiqued by the page members for being too sensual. It said, "This group full of people who think most depictions of the human form is somehow seedy or soft porn is fast becoming a real joke. You should be ashamed calling yourself lovers of modern art. I so had it. Pathetic prudes. Go look at some Norman Rockwell." It's through illustrating the very popular Saturday Evening Post that Norman Rockwell will be known throughout America. Keep in mind, television was just starting to make a breakthrough in American households, so if you wanted any kind of visual entertainment at your home, magazines were pretty much the only option. This meant that any artist illustrating for these magazines would reach fame and recognition. Rockwell often painted the innocence of kids, comical scenes, or just cute, typically American images. Since his illustrations were meant to be shown to such a broad public, it was, to many people, tame, bland, and boring. As the Facebook comment noted, Norman Rockwell is known to be bland, apolitical, and marketable, as seen in this commercial.
He is America's best-loved illustrator, Mr. Norman Rockwell.
Don't worry, I'm not going to skate. I'm no good on skates. My medium of expression is, paint and brushes and canvas. I've painted for a long, long time, and I've enjoyed it, too. And I paint the different seasons. I paint winter, and I paint spring and summer. But there's my favorite. I just love to paint summer. I can really warm up to summer. And the way I picture summer is the way you've so often seen me paint it. With a kid, his grandpop, and his dog floating along fishing for perch. Or a really terrific doubleheader on the 4th of July. And to me, summer is a whole family out in the country on a picnic. Or just sitting at home on the front porch relaxing. But no matter where you are, an important part of the American scene is a good cold glass of beer.
And may we remind you to make a glass of beer or ale part of your summer scene.
But if you go back just a few seconds, you see in the background one of Rockwell's first paintings which could be considered political. Let's take a look at Norman Rockwell's political art. The painting is simply called Freedom of Speech. When Rockwell attended a local town meeting, he saw someone voicing his disagreement. He was the only contestant, yet people still listened respectfully and attentively. He looks a bit like Abraham Lincoln, and most people in the composition are looking at him, even Rockwell himself. This painting is political because of its subject matter, but also because it's the first painting in Norman Rockwell's For Freedom series, which is directly inspired by Franklin D. Roosevelt's 1941 State of the Union address, where he identifies 4 freedoms.
The first is freedom of speech and expression everywhere in the world. The second is freedom of every person to worship God in his own way everywhere in the world. The third is freedom from want, which translated into world terms means economic understandings which will secure to every nation a healthy, peacetime life for its inhabitants everywhere in the world. The fourth is freedom from fear, which translated into world terms means a worldwide reduction of armaments to such a point and in such a thorough fashion that no nation will be in a position to commit an act of physical aggression against any neighbor anywhere in the world.
These four freedoms were a way to draw an ideological line between the United States and Nazi Germany. The Nazis had invaded a large part of Europe and they were in the process of attacking England. Roosevelt was preparing the United States for a possible intervention in the war, and he was also establishing what a post-war world would look like. It greatly inspired Rockwell, who really wanted to contribute to the war effort. The Four Freedoms series was political propaganda designed to entice people to go to war, to defend America and its values. The Office of War Information, or the institution in charge of war propaganda in the US, used Rockwell's paintings, sold them as posters, and collected, just from Rockwell's art, $132 million in war bonds. Let's take a closer look at these paintings. The first freedom was freedom of speech, as seen earlier. The second was freedom of worship, which is the least popular artwork of this series. It's extremely crowded and many people are praying, all in different ways. Some with religious text, others with a rosary necklace, some with their hands joined together, and some without any formal way of worshiping. We'll skip to the fourth freedom, which is freedom from fear. You see here two parents putting their two children to bed, hoping that their security would never be in danger, hoping that they'd never have to live in fear. In his left hand, the father holds a newspaper on which you can read bombings and horror. The idea here is that we have to fight for our kids' future so that tomorrow, when they wake up, they'll feel safe and free. The third freedom is freedom from want, or Rockwell's Thanksgiving. There is, at the center of the frame, the traditional turkey served by the motherly figure. The table is surrounded by people and is overlooked by the fatherly figure. It's a very traditional and idealized version of a Thanksgiving feast. Interestingly enough, though this painting is arguably the most popular of the series, it's also the freedom that is the least liberal. Freedom of speech, worship, and fear all go without saying, but freedom from want, especially in America today, wouldn't be considered an essential freedom. If anything, American culture doesn't want to free us from want, but rather it encourages it. Our culture stimulates want. It manufactures it. The fact that these freedoms weren't even respected by the country defending them really disappointed Rockwell. After World War II, there was a lot of hope for a new and better world. By the 1960s, this hope died. Freedom from fear was definitely a lie, as America's violent interventions in lesser developed countries was spreading terror. Rockwell notably opposed the Vietnam War. Freedom of speech was also hardly respected for a large part of the population, as racial segregation made African Americans second-class citizens. Norman Rockwell would focus on this last issue. When asked why he didn't paint many black people in the past, he answered that it was because the Saturday Evening Post, the magazine he used to work for, didn't allow it. Painting African Americans would be too disturbing to the audience. This is where Norman Rockwell will voice an even stronger political position through his art. He resigned from the Saturday Evening Post, and in 1964, he painted The Problem We All Live With. The topic is pretty self-evident for anybody who knows the story of Ruby Bridges and the New Orleans school desegregation crisis of 1960. In 1960, two all-white elementary schools in New Orleans were forced to accept black students. Riots were sparked, parents boycotted the school, and every teacher except one refused to teach. Ruby Bridges was 6 years old when she showed up to her first day of class in a formerly all-white school. She was escorted by 4 federal marshals while protesters violently demonstrated their disapproval by throwing things and yelling out racial slurs. Here in Rockwell's painting, you see the reenactment of the whole event. You see Bridges, the man escorting her, the protests, and the slurs. We're looking at the young girl going to school from the perspective of the protesters. The focus is on her because we can't even see the man's faces, but also because the composition beautifully frames her. I also really like how Rockwell doesn't place her in the center of the frame, but slightly ahead, as if she was very excited to go to school. It shows a great display of confidence, which is also demonstrated through her strong posture. Rockwell is taking a strong stance for desegregation, which he also did through the paintings Southern Justice and New Kids in the Neighborhood. In The Problem We All Live With, the child's innocence is contrasted with the violence of the adult world. In New Kids in the Neighborhood, the children's charming innocence is shown through their curiosity, their awkwardness, and the will from both sides to play baseball. What's amazing in these later paintings is that while Norman Rockwell did decide to create more serious and controversial images, he still did it through his typical and sensitive depiction of child innocence. Thank you so much for watching. Special thanks to Isak and every other patron for supporting us. If you also want to support us, check us out on patreon.com/thecanvas.